Well, to be perfectly honest, I didn't want to become a broadcast journalist. I wanted to become a lawyer.
Mm.
And I was on a pre-law track at UCSB in the 1980s. And I was a history public policy major with a political science minor, intending to go to law school. But in my sophomore year, a professor, um, his name was Ron Teichman, he was a lecturer. He said, my daughter works at KEYT at the local TV station, and you should go. They're opening up internships and you should apply.
Mm.
And I thought, well, that's unusual. But I had recently taken a leave of absence from school for medical reasons. And I thought, well, I have some time on my hands. So I picked up the phone and called, and it happened to be Giselle Fernandez,
Mm.
who was somebody that I really admired. She was a Latina on the air, and she took my call and she said, come on in. And it was I walked into the newsroom, and that was back in 1985. And there was such an energy in the newsroom, typewriters, we were still on typewriters then, they were clacking, the teletype machine was clacking, the scanners were going. And it was one of those moments where I thought, I want to be here. I want to do this. And King Harris, who was the news director back then, he looked at me and he said, are you Lopez? And I said, yeah. And he said, come on. And I just followed him, and we went down to the Sheraton back then. It was a Sheraton. And it happened to be that the White House press corps was in residence because President Reagan was at the Western White House. So I walk in and hear all these, journalists that I admired, television reporters that I admired, network, Leslie Stahl, Donald, Sam Donaldson. And I thought, oh my goodness, is this what local news is like? Which it's not, but I got a taste of it. And I ended up doing an internship. And back then in the newsroom, it's much different now. You did everything. I started, writing things for the weather report. I did everything they asked me. I would haul cable, I would rip wire, I would carry equipment, and tag along with some of the reporters like Paul Vercammen and Larry Good and Lance Orozco, and people who I still admire today for their journalism. And I learned from
It's like
them.
a dream team era.
It
You
was.
mentioned those names. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. And I learned from them. I learned on the job journalism. And by the time I was in my junior year, I was reporting on the weekends. I was doing the Good Morning America cut-ins in front of the camera. And then I would, get off the air, and I'd be in my class at UCSB by 9:00. So by the time I was actually in my senior year, the anchor Kim Inslee had left, and they asked me to step in. And so I started anchoring the 6 p.m. and the 11 p.m. news while I was a senior in college. So by then, Giselle Fernandez had moved on. She moved on to KTLA in LA, and then she moved on to the network, but she didn't forget about me. And she told her agent about me, Kenny Lindner, who was with William Morris, and he called me and he said, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I want to go to law school still. And he said, well, if you could move ahead in TV news, where would you go? And I said, well, I've always wanted to live in Santa Barbara, so I don't know that I would leave. But if I went anywhere, I'd probably go as far as San Diego or LA, which was pretty naive at the time to make a jump from Santa Barbara to LA, market 117 to market 2. And he said, well, if I can do that, will you do it? And I said, sure. And at that time, Disney Company had purchased KHJ in Los Angeles, and they were going from a staff of 30 to a staff of 300. So I got an interview, and they hired me to do the 6 a.m. Anchor the 6 a.m. news and the 12 p.m. noon news at noon.
Wow.
So I took it. And my mother always said, well, what happened to law school? So yeah. And